We are back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, back on the New York Jets to talk about them getting better in 2024. How do they do that? Obviously, it wouldn't hurt to have Davante Adams back with Aaron Rodgers, and that has been a rumor that has gained a little bit more traction, I think, over the last few days, over the weekend, really, because this started to swirl up at the beginning of the offseason where a lot of rumors were just flying all over the place during the tampering period and all of that, the start of free agency, and especially around the draft as well, you get more of your rumors. But now, this is a new one that I've seen pop up yet again, and initially, I wasn't a big believer in this ever happening. I just thought it was over. You know, the Raiders gave a massive contract to Davante Adams. The New York Jets are sort of doing their thing, building around Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mike Williams, obviously Aaron Rodgers. That seems to be their identity, their core group of guys there to build around. But at the end of the day, you can't really ever be perfectly content with what you have in your roster. There's always improving. There's always room to get better, and I guess that's where this is coming from. You know, I first heard about some rumblings about this on the Up and Adams show and how Davante Adams was on there, and he talked about Aaron Rodgers recently just being in his ear about playing together again. Then, after those comments, you had Aaron Rodgers say at a golf tournament that he loves Davante as a teammate previously playing with him and that he can't wait to play with him yet again. So, it doesn't get much clearer than that. Obviously, he said he can't wait to play with him again at some point. It's going to be soon because Aaron's not going to play for the next 5 years if it were to be the case. Same thing with Davante Adams. Well, I guess he could play for the next 5 because he's only 31. But we have a small window here where if it is going to happen, it's going to happen pretty soon. So that added some more gas on the fire there. Now you have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall pretty much being very open about it, being very just nonchalant, very casual about talking about Davante Adams, almost like he's on the team already. Specifically, Breece Hall. He first had some comments to Kay Adams on the idea of this happening, and he said, nah, I'm getting the ball the second most, referring to Davante Adams. Davante, he knows he's going to get his, and pretty much seeming like Davante's already on the team, talking about who's going to get the ball the most amount of times on the team. So that was one thing. Then Breece Hall continued, and he said that, hey, you never know about the idea of Davante joining the Jets. He said, you never know. We're always talking. We're always scheming about the possibility of Davante joining. So that's Breece Hall. Pretty clear about it. Then Garrett Wilson shared some similar feelings about the whole situation to the New York Post. He said, I see that. I'm excited. I'm with all of it. Anyone we can get into the facility to help this team win games, I'm with it, and he's one of those. A little bit more eased off, not too eager about it like Breece Hall was, but he kept it more politically correct. Not specifically mentioning Davante Adams like Breece Hall did, but you get a similar idea, sort of sense from both of them that, hey, this could be a reality in the near future if they're going to keep talking about it, if they're getting questions asked about it right now. But more from Breece Hall about this idea of Davante Adams going to the New York Jets, joining him and the team, and how deadly of a team they could be. He said, I think we should. I'm on board. I mean, with him, with Garrett, and Mike Williams. Just pick your poison. Do you want me to beat you, or do you want those two beating you with Aaron? And those are pretty much all the quotes. Both of them, young guys, obviously. Both young, hungry guys that want to have success on this team. And usually with the younger players, this new generation of players coming in, they're not really too shy about saying things or saying how they feel. So I guess I shouldn't be so surprised, but I don't know. You don't really hear it be talked about in such a manner like this, with both of them being pretty open about wanting Davante to join the team. But there are some hurdles, obviously, with this if this were to be a reality. Davante Adams still has about 3 years left on his current contract, so any sort of trade or any sort of transaction to get Davante over to New York is going to cost the Jets a lot. And the main idea with this Jets team on how they've built it, on how they've structured everything, their acquisitions, Aaron Rodgers coming over, especially with Robert Saleh too and his timeline through all of this, they've really set it so the main portion of this winning, hopefully that is going to happen in 2024 and 2025, it's all going to happen really in this 2 to 3 year window. They've set everything up to make it so that these next 2 to 3 years are the most successful. And I just am not sure if they could get Davante Adams one right now in this offseason, because we're already about to start training camp, and you could obviously expect the Raiders to have everything planned around Davante and everything planned around incorporating him, getting the best out of him. He is their best player at the end of the day. So to now trade him when they don't have to, one, seems unlikely, and one, you'd have to trade an ungodly amount of things to get Davante over to your team, especially trading within the conference in the AFC with how tight everything is, how talented every team is, especially with the quarterbacks and just how stacked some of these offenses are getting. It doesn't seem likely that the Raiders will just give Davante Adams up for basically nothing, even though Aaron Rodgers, Garrett, Breece might all want to play with him. It's going to cost the Jets a lot, and I'm not sure if it is really worth it right now, and if it really makes sense for the Jets to do it at the end of the day. Of course, Rodgers has his influence, and I'm not saying he pulls the strings on everything, he makes the decisions on everything, but still, if Aaron Rodgers wants Davante to come over, if he's really adamant about it, and you can see it really without really him having to say it, he already had Nathaniel Hackett come over. And after getting fired with how well, or how bad I should say, he performed with the Denver Broncos, a very good argument can be made that he should not have gotten that job right after the fact that he got fired. But you can point right at the fact that Aaron Rodgers is there. He believed in him and he wanted him to be hired, so the Jets hired him. And now you saw some of those problems pop up last year, and you hope that it could get better. But that's one example of Aaron pulling some strings there without obviously him saying he is. Allen Lazard's on the team. Randall Cobb was on the team last year, I want to say, as well. So the influence from Rodgers is there. If he goes to Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, or any of these guys and says that it would be a great for him and this team to get Davante Adams, they might be open to it. But again, I feel more of a worry in other areas of this team rather than offense, because I think they're perfectly fine with Garrett, with Lazard, with Mike Williams, with Breece Hall and these guys. Malachi Corley, he's a good receiver. Xavier Gibson has been getting a lot of praises in OTAs and in mandatory minicamp. I don't really see the need of going for Davante Adams. Not that Davante's not a good player, that nobody in the NFL wouldn't want him. Obviously, everybody would want him, but for the steep price for a 31, 32-year-old wide receiver that's getting paid a lot of money also, I don't see it making too much sense for the Jets, especially because you don't know how good this team could really be yet. I know it looked awful last year, but can we at least see how they look with Aaron Rodgers playing? You know, last year he got hurt 5 plays into the season, and you didn't really get to see what you have in combination with Aaron throwing to Garrett, throwing to Allen Lazard, or handing it off to Breece Hall. Can we see what it looks like before we throw some more future draft picks, some more capital to get Davante Adams when it might not be as necessary, if you're not going to make that big of a difference to eventually win the Super Bowl or anything like that? Because if Davante Adams comes over, are they a lock to win the Super Bowl? Probably not. They're probably still behind the Ravens, behind the Chiefs, and I would probably put them, but if we're talking whole NFL, I'd probably put them behind the 49ers, behind the Lions as well. So it really just doesn't make too much sense for me at this point for them to make that sort of decision right now to get Davante Adams over on this team. And also, if I were the Jets, I'd really just look overall to improve the offensive line. I keep harping on it, but that is one that worries me, just from the fact that I know they got better, but at the same time, according to reports, according to sources close to the Jets, they all haven't really been practicing together. That chemistry hasn't really been built up yet. And I know they're all veteran players. Maybe they don't need to as much. They're probably going to get a lot of rest days in training camp, but you need something there to have some chemistry there, especially if you're going to be protecting the key to everything. You don't want one of them going down. Then the depth at that area might not be as strong. So that's really the worst case scenario. I want them to improve some of that depth, maybe elsewhere look to reinforce the tight end position because I don't think that's really a strong suit for them. You can try to do that, and maybe elsewhere on the defensive side of the ball, make it a little bit more sturdy. I don't think you need an elite wide receiver where if you do bring him in, it might not even move the needle that much to make you Super Bowl contenders, but that's how I feel about it. The Jets clearly want him. Obviously, Rodgers wants him. They had a great connection, and it's going to bring some positives. It's going to look exciting. I'm not saying they're not going to create moments again, but we're talking long-term with this team. The Jets want to make the playoffs again, want to make a name for themselves again, because the last time they did that, I want to say, I had it written down. I can't find it now, but it's been a long time, obviously. It's been a long time since the Jets have been in a Super Bowl or anything like that. So that's really the standard right now. That's the needle. That's the ceiling, the standard that the Jets have want to set. At least making the playoffs and making a good showing this year. I don't really see Davante being the missing piece that you absolutely need to bring him in. But that's just my point of view. The Jets could end up doing it, and we'll just see how it goes from there. But let me know what you guys think about it. Do the Jets need Davante Adams? And two, do you think they'll end up getting him this offseason or the next? Leave your thoughts in the chat box or in the comments section afterwards. But we have two more topics to talk about on today's show. A brewing rivalry in the AFC South between the Colts and the Texans. Stay tuned to find out what Colts linebacker E.J. Speed said about their matchup with the Houston Texans in 2024. And also, we're going to talk about the 49ers fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, talking about the painful, hurtful pay cut that he had to take this year. It hurt his ego a little bit, but it was required for him to stay on the 49ers and really to benefit him long-term in football. Find out more on those topics after the break. We'll be right back.